At 3 a.m. on the stormy morning of February 14th, 2000, a 9-year-old little girl packed a book bag, left her home, and began to walk down a dark, rainy highway before disappearing more than 24 years ago. This case will leave you with more questions than what you started with. It's a case where nothing really makes sense. I'm talking about the mysterious disappearance of Asha Degree. Before we jump into all the details of this case, if you are a fan of true crime or unsolved mysteries, please consider liking this video or subscribing to my channel for weekly video uploads. It's very helpful to this smaller growing channel like this one. I'd also like to dedicate this video to the family of Asha Degree. It was recently the 24th anniversary of her disappearance on Valentine's Day 2024. I can only imagine how it is to lose a child under such strange and mysterious circumstances and to be left with so many agonizing questions years later. I hope that the continued coverage of Asha's case helps to bring those long-awaited answers that her family is still so desperate for. In 2000, Asha Degree was a 9-year-old little girl living in Shelby, North Carolina with her parents Harold and Aquila and her older brother O'Brien. Harold, her father, worked as a dock loader at PPG, while Aquila, her mother, worked for Kauai American Manufacturing, a company well known for building pianos. Asha was described as bright and athletic and did well in school, and she was also known for being the star point guard for her school's basketball team. People described her as shy, cautious, and sensible, but did have a particular phobia for dogs. Her parents, Aquila and Harold, raised both her and her older brother O'Brien in somewhat of a sheltered environment. Reports state that they did not have a computer in their home and that the parents were also very strict with what their two children could watch in regards to television. Asha's mother has even been quoted as saying, "Every time you turn on the TV, there was some pedophile who had lured somebody's child away via the internet," quote unquote. That being said, I think it is safe to assume that Asha was raised to be cautious and skeptical of any strangers. It's even been reported that even if a family member of Asha's came over to visit, like Harold's sister or her aunt, for example, knocked on their front door, she wouldn't answer the door unless her mother told her it was okay to. In the days leading up to Asha's disappearance, both her and her brother had basketball games at Burns Middle School. It was reported that Asha had a particularly tough game and also had been complaining of a leg injury before and during. This game was her team's first loss of the season, and she reportedly was very upset about it. I do think that this is normal for a young child of her age to be upset about losing a game that was important to her. That night, she ended up having a slumber party at her cousin Cantina's house, and the two reportedly stayed up late watching TV, something Asha didn't normally get to do. Later reports also state the girls watched Showtime at the Apollo and stayed up late dancing, pretending that they were on Soul Train. The next morning, Asha's parents and her older brother picked her up at her cousin's house to attend church. This was normal for the family. Her brother has reported that Asha didn't seem like her normal self this day, and that she seemed like she was unhappy about something. When he did ask her what was wrong, she reportedly said that she was feeling some guilt about losing her basketball game the previous day. After church was over, they went over to another cousin's house by the name of Shalonda Brown. It was at this time Asha's grandmother gave her some gifts for the upcoming Valentine's Day holiday, some perfume and some candy. It was now the afternoon and the Degrees returned to their home. Asha was tired at this time from staying up late with her cousin the previous night. So according to her mother, she fell asleep on the couch at around 6:30 p.m., but was awoken a few hours later by a thunderstorm. When she did wake up, her mother had been urging the two children to take a bath, but at around 9 p.m., a car crashed into a nearby utility pole and caused a power outage. It was at this time Asha's mother sent both her and her brother to bed. So this is when the story starts to become somewhat unclear, particularly around Asha's father Harold's movements. So bear with me as I try to explain a somewhat confusing array of stories. Some reports say Harold, Asha's father, had left for work earlier that day, returned back to the home somewhere around 12:30 a.m. But either he left to get Valentine's Day candy at the store, or he had stayed up watching TV until 2:30 a.m. I will note that February 14th, Valentine's Day, was Harold and Aquila's wedding anniversary. So him going and leaving for the store to get a gift would make sense. However, other reports claim he was home with the rest of the family the entire evening, and that he and Aquila stayed up late till around 12:30 a.m. when the power came back on, and she decided to go to bed. Either way, he claims he checked on Asha and her brother, who shared a room somewhere around 2:30 a.m., and they were still sleeping soundly. Next, it's reported that around 2:30 a.m., Asha's brother O'Brien was awakened by Asha returning from the restroom potentially. He stated that he saw Asha standing there with her white nightgown on that had red trim and a teddy bear on the front. Her brother has been quoted as saying he heard some squeaking noises coming from Asha's bed and didn't really think anything further of it. He drifted off to sleep and didn't report hearing anything else or out of the ordinary that evening. The next morning, Aquila went into the children's room around 6:30 a.m. to find that Asha was missing. It's reported that Aquila had called several different family members at this time to see if anyone had any idea where Asha was by chance, but obviously nobody had seen or heard from her. After talking to those family members and getting nothing but dead ends, Aquila immediately called the police, who showed up very shortly after at around 6:40 a.m. Immediately, police began to search for Asha along with the help of hundreds of volunteers. Canines were also used in an attempt to track Asha's scent, however, they lost her scent at the home's driveway. By 12 p.m. that day, North Carolina Highway Patrol began air searches by helicopter, and police began to tape off the Degree home, only letting Harold, Aquila, and O'Brien inside. As police conducted their investigation, they found no signs of foul play or forced entry. Actually, both the front and the back door were locked when the parents woke up that morning. As Harold and Aquila began to look through Asha's belongings to see if anything was missing, they did notice that several items had been taken, including her black Tweety Bird purse, her house key, candy, and clothes. As the news of Asha's disappearance began to spread, puzzling tips about her whereabouts began to roll in. 2 separate truck drivers claimed to have seen Asha walking down Highway 18 around the early morning hours of 4 a.m. the morning she went missing. The first tip came from a man by the name of Jeff Roop, a 25-year-old trucker from Sundrop Bottling Company, who'd been driving his normal route when he saw a young girl with pigtails, wearing a white dress, white tennis shoes, and a backpack, walking southbound. Obviously, Jeff thought it was extremely strange to see a little girl walking down the highway at almost 4 o'clock in the morning, in the pouring rain, mind you. He made a U-turn and was now driving in the opposite direction in which Asha was walking. He claims that as he passed, Asha kept her eyes straight forward and almost intent on her destination. So he made another U-turn, so now he was driving in the same direction Asha was walking in. He began to call out to her, but she ran into a nearby dark wooded area that had lined the highway. Later in the day, as Jeff sat down to eat lunch, a news report with Asha's photo played on the television. He immediately recognized the little girl's face and contacted police. The next tip came from a former Cleveland County Sheriff's deputy named Roy Blayton Sr. Roy and his son Roy Jr. were driving northbound on Highway 18, just finishing a trucking run. They recalled that around 4:15 a.m., they too saw Asha near an intersection of Highway 18 and 180. I will note that this would put Asha nearly a mile and a half away from her home. Like the previous tip, Roy claims that he saw what he thought at the time was a small person in white clothes walking down the side of the highway. At the time, Roy didn't think it was a child. He actually thought it was possibly a woman involved in some sort of domestic violence dispute and had possibly left her home on foot. So instead of turning around, he radioed other nearby truckers to be on the lookout just to avoid hitting a pedestrian. The father and son would then stop in Falston, North Carolina on their way to Chicago, where Roy Sr. checked in with his wife, and she informed him of Asha's disappearance. The next day, the two returned to Shelby, North Carolina, and reported their tip in person to the command post at Moles Memorial Baptist Church. It was at this time that investigators really solidified that Asha had left on her own free will, which was hard to believe. A 9-year-old girl who had led a relatively sheltered life and was notably weary of strangers and thunderstorms, packed her book bag and her Tweety Bird purse, and decided to leave the comfort of her home for the dark, stormy, unknown world outside. This just begs the question, why? What drives a small child to make that decision? On February 15th, so the next day after Asha went missing, the widespread search effort continued. During the search, a property about a mile or so south of the Degree home was checked by volunteers. The property belonged to a man by the name of Charles Turner, who owned a small home upholstery business with his wife, Raleigh. The search volunteers actually approached Raleigh and her young daughter that day and asked if they could search their property, including the 3 outbuildings, for any signs of Asha. And when I say that, they're asking Raleigh to do the searching. They're not doing the searching themselves. And so when she would go and look around her property, she actually did find a few items, including a white 1996 Atlanta Olympics pencil, some candy wrappers, a green marker, a yellow hair bow, and then a wallet-sized photo of a young girl. So the following day, Raleigh and her husband Charles, like I mentioned before, came into the police station, but only with the photo they found, none of the other items, which is kind of strange. When police actually said that it wasn't Asha, they never mentioned the other items at all. The photo was shown to the Degrees, but they said at the time that it was not their daughter and that they actually had no idea who the young girl was. Investigators actually have no idea to this day who that little girl is in this photo. They've even explored the idea that it could have been a schoolmate of Asha's, but that has also been disproven. And in a strange coincidence, during the routine investigation to rule out any suspects, law enforcement had given polygraph tests to Aquila, Harold, and various others. One of those people being Jeff Roop, the first truck driver who had given a tip to police about seeing Asha that early morning. Not only did he pass, but he took police to exactly where he saw her that morning. And it happened to be near a field that was owned by the Turners, the same family who came forward with the girl's photo that they had found on their property. After Jeff Roop pointed investigators to the area near the Turners' property, volunteers returned to search the property once again. Now, this is the point where there seems to be some issues with communication between law enforcement agencies, along with the volunteers. The investigators that were at the Turners' property on this day of the 17th didn't have any knowledge that the Turners had been in contact with Cleveland County Sheriff's Office or that they had spoken to the volunteers that were there to search previously. It wasn't until that the searchers actually found candy wrappers themselves and approached the Turners with their findings that they explained that they had been in contact with the Sheriff's Office and everything about the photo. It was also at this time that they revealed all the other items that they had found, so police took them in for evidence. During the rest of their search, they found even more empty candy wrappers. It was also confirmed by Aquila and Harold that the items that they did find did in fact belong to Asha. It's assumed that once Jeff Roop called out to Asha that night, she veered into the Turner's field and found shelter in one of the open outbuildings. I will note that the closest outbuilding to the highway was over 600 feet away from the road and would have required Asha to cross a 3-foot gully and then climbing uphill. Once confirmed, a police canine was brought in to search that area and the Turner's property, but did not find anything. Some people wonder if Asha used this outbuilding to rest, eat some candy, and change into a warmer outfit, as the second sighting of her, she was thought to be wearing jeans and a white long-sleeve t-shirt. On February 20th, law enforcement called off the ground search for Asha, instead choosing to focus on setting up a department to field all the tips coming into police. Amongst those tips were those suggesting that Asha could have maybe been inspired by a book her class was reading at the time to run away. Another came from actual close friends of Asha, who said that around February 10th, so 4 or so days before she went missing, she had shown them a wallet with money inside at school. When the Degrees were asked where she could have gotten this money, they had absolutely no idea. This has led speculation that Asha could have been possibly groomed by some unknown person, but obviously that's a big what if. The next update in this case would come a year and a half later after Asha was last seen. On August 2nd, 2001, while doing grading work off Highway 18 in nearby Burke County, so around 30 miles north of where Asha was last reported, a man by the name of Terry Fleming was digging with a shovel when he discovered what he thought was a black plastic bag. What he found was a black and beige backpack that had been double wrapped in a garbage bag. He opened it and found Asha's name and phone number written on the inside. At the time, he didn't know who Asha was. However, he did find the discovery suspicious. Unfortunately, he didn't have any cell phone service where he was, so he decided to write down Asha's name and number on a piece of paper and just leave the backpack where he found it. Terry got wrapped up in work and actually forgot about the discovery until the next day when he decided to show the paper with the name and number to his wife. She, on the other hand, knew exactly who Asha was and told her husband that he needed to contact police immediately. Terry would call police around 10 a.m. on August 3rd, and Burke County Police assisted Cleveland County Sheriff's Office with securing the site. An extensive search of the area would begin, although nothing else was found. However, this discovery did somewhat confirm that foul play was involved in Asha's disappearance. As you can imagine, this was really frustrating for the Degree family. It not only confirmed their worst fears, but it just led to more dead ends. The contents of what was found in that backpack wasn't released to the public at the time. The only thing they did say is that there were clothes and other belongings of Asha's. It wasn't until 2018 that the FBI revealed to the public that there were items found in the backpack that did not belong to her. Items that included a New Kids on the Block concert t-shirt and a Dr. Seuss book titled McElligot's Pool. And a frustrating twist, it turned out the book had also been checked out of the library at Asha's school, Falston Elementary, in early 2001, so right around the time that she went missing. Although it has been revealed that the school has no record of who actually checked out that book. Since law enforcement released these photos, there have been no additional details or information released about the two items. Next, on May 15, 2016, the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, together with the FBI, released new information from an investigation done the previous year. New tips had been called into the police that a girl matching Asha's description had been seen on February 14, 2000, getting into a green car near the area where she was last seen. They had also mentioned that two other passengers were in the vehicle that night. The car had been described as an early 1970s Ford Thunderbird or a Lincoln Mark, with rust around the wheel wells. When this new information was released, there was confusion as to why anyone would have waited 15 years to come forward. But according to reports, similar tips had been called in around the time Asha went missing, but were overlooked for one reason or another. Law enforcement only began to take them seriously when they began to reinvestigate the case in 2015. So to this day, law enforcement has never publicly come forward with any suspects or theories about what really happened to Asha. But that has not stopped avid followers of this case from speculating about what really happened to her that night over 24 years ago. Before we jump into all the details of those theories, I do just want to say that this is all alleged and purely speculation, meant for discussion purposes only. Like I mentioned previously, there were theories that Asha could have been potentially groomed by an adult in her life, given the money that she had shown to friends a few days prior to her disappearance. Could Asha have been willing to face her fears in exchange for whatever the groomer promised her? I personally think that this is a little far-fetched. I can't see the groomer asking his 9-year-old victim to walk at least a mile in the middle of the night to meet him. Also, like I mentioned before, some people wondered if she could have been inspired by the novel her class was reading to Runaway. Even the idea that she could have been sleepwalking has been proposed. Again, I don't think sleepwalking makes sense either. I know sleepwalkers have been known to do some pretty elaborate things, but I do have a hard time believing that the intense storm outside wouldn't have woken up Asha. One more widely believed or disputed theory is that Asha's father Harold could have been involved in her disappearance. Some question if her life was more strict and harsh than we originally thought, and that she could have ran away in an attempt to escape. I will also note that the Degree's timeline of events has been somewhat contradictory in the past. In certain accounts, Asha was napping on the couch the evening before she went missing. In others, she's actually sleeping in her bedroom. But that's just one example of the inconsistencies that have come up over the years. But the Degrees have been reported as devastated and nothing but cooperative with the police. However, critics still argue that the combination of giving different stories and just the likelihood of parental involvement makes Harold and Aquila Degree suspicious. Another interesting theory I thought I would note is that when Roy Blayton Sr., so the second trucker that had reported seeing Asha that night, radioed to others in the area about what he thought was a vulnerable woman walking on the side of the highway, that it's possible that a nearby predator actually took that as an opportunity to strike. I want to hear what you think is the most likely reason for Asha leaving her home that night. Do you think that there was an adult that lured her out that evening, or do you think that she decided on her own and just met foul play along the way? Comment below. Either way, more than 24 years later, Asha is still missing, and we have no answers for what really happened to her that night, or what motivated her to pack her belongings and walk along a dark, rainy highway. If you or anyone you know has information about the disappearance of Asha Degree, please contact the Cleveland County Sheriff's Department at 704-484-4788 or 704-484-4787 to submit an anonymous tip. Thank you very much for watching this video. Comment below with what unsolved case you think that I should cover next. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more true crime and unsolved mysteries. I will see you solvers in the next video. Bye.